Well, hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Johnny and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. And so this is going to be part one of our build of Trumpeters World War II LCM-3 U.S. Navy Vehicle Landing Craft. We'll just refer to it as the LCM-3 from now on, I think. And it is a 172 scale kit. So it's time to get building. So this is part one. We're going to start our build.
All right, so let's take a look at our instructions here. That's page one. We don't need that. Here we go. We're going to kind of go through here. I'm thinking that our major items are going to be the ones that we need to pay attention to first. Number one, we're looking at like the fitment of the deck here to the hull. Main reason, of course, is to make sure that that fits good, and centered there inside that deck is the actual cargo area that we're going to have to insert, and we're going to want to make sure that that fits correctly. And of course, probably we're going to have to do the ramp too. I'm not real sure, but it kind of looks like those hinges go up underneath the midship area or the cargo area. So we'll probably have to do that as well. And we just want to check all that fitment to make sure that it's all good. So we're going to have to build some of this up, of course, but that's okay. There's no parts underneath them. So we'll just skip ahead and start working on the tub portion there, that cargo area. Okay, so we're going to need some parts. Let's go ahead and start cutting parts off here. We'll go ahead and separate our deck section here. We're going to need that. And of course, we're going to need the bottom section of the cargo area, or what they call in the instructions, the midships area. Of course, the sides for that. There's a left and right side for that. And just a bunch of other stuff that we're going to do, the bulkhead and everything. Now, when I cut these off, as you can see, I left all the sprue gates on the part themselves. And that way, when the sprue is out of our way, we can get in there with our nippers and get really close to the part. And that helps us get a nice clean cut there, so that we can come back later and just kind of sand that down and clean it up. So it's without that sprue being in the way, you can get really close to the edge of the part where you need to cut. And I know a lot of you guys already know this, but we do have quite a few viewers that are new to the hobby, and I'm sure that they'll appreciate being able to see these little processes. Now, our bulkhead has 4 rather large ejector pin marks here. Lucky for us, though, they are proud of the surface. That means they're standing out. So I'm going to use my Tamiya handy router here, and we're going to take most of it off and then come back in with a sanding stick and smooth it out. And I'll sand it with a 400, and then we're going to progress to a 600 to get those cleaned up, because they will be visible, and that's kind of unfortunate on this piece, but that's the way they molded it, so we'll just have to clean that up. Now, there are 2 versions of this boat, so what I'm doing now is I'm just gauging and checking the drill bit size to the indicated holes that are on the back side for the U.S. Navy version. So using the Tamiya handy drill here, we're going to go ahead and drill out these holes, because we have 4 steps that go up this bulkhead, and we're going to want to go ahead and drill these out so that we can locate those steps. And of course, anytime you drill through plastic, which is also true with metal, you're going to end up with a burr. So we just need to kind of scrape that off and kind of clean those little burrs off there where the drill bit has broken through. onto the side that we're going to be seeing. Also, we do have a few of these ejector pin marks that are standing proud of the surface on the sides. And anything below those structural elements are not a problem as far as being seen, but we just want to make sure it doesn't mess with the fitment. Here we're going to go ahead and check that rear bulkhead, and it doesn't quite fit right. That's a bad omen, isn't it? I don't know why, but for some reason they have this tab and slot off on the right side. It just doesn't fit quite right, if I could say that. A little bit of filing there, and we kind of get it together. So, no problems. Moving right along, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and put these steps on, because they're going to be down inside this cargo area, and it's going to be hard to get in there. So we'll take this opportunity to install these, and they are they are very small parts. So I have left the sprue gate on these, as you can see. And here, what's going on is that after you get these glued up and the glue sets off, we'll be able to clean those up. Next, there is a vent, so we will go ahead and put that vent in place too. It's just easier to do it now, and you don't have to worry about getting it upside down, because the way the pins are arranged on it, it'll only go one way. Now we're going to go back in and trim off those pesky little sprue gates there, and a little bit of trimming here and there to clean them up, and then we can go ahead and sand them. And this just makes the whole process so much easier. We don't have to worry about losing these little bitty parts to the carpet monster or breaking them, because they are secure to that bulkhead. So they're much more sturdy now than they would have been if we were just trying to clean them up freehand. And there we are with our ladders installed and our vent, and we're all cleaned up, ready to go. Never hurts to go back and look and check your work, see if something's crooked or misaligned or something. So next up, we're going to go ahead and glue that bulkhead in place. Now I just want to point out that there are 2 holes on the bottom of this deck here in the cargo area that you need to drill out if you're building the Royal Navy version. Since I'm building the U.S. Navy version, I'm not going to drill those out. Those 2 little holes there is for a different type of ladder that the Royal Navy spec'd for their craft. And of course I am checking squareness here. I think I'm going to let that set up and set off for a little bit before I start messing with it. I don't want to knock this off or out of alignment while I'm putting the sides of it on. So once that has had time to set up, we can go ahead and install. This is the right side, and just attached it to the bulkhead, and then I'm just going to attach it on down the seam a little bit at a time. When it comes to the left side, however, when we get it flush with the cargo area deck, the tab does not insert. Again, another tab issue. So we're just going to go ahead and make it fit. So a little bit of filing there. Kind of shorten that tab just a little bit, and it goes right into place. So we'll just go ahead and cement this into place. So far we've had 2 tabs. That doesn't fit very good. Okay, so our tub is done. We're going to set that aside and let that dry completely. And I think maybe we need to start working on this hinge, because it's going to be underneath the deck there of our cargo area. So that's going to be a problem. So we'll go ahead and build these up and get them fitted to the craft. So I'll go ahead and tell you now, there are little mold seams and stuff that you need to clean up on these parts, but it's very, very important that you pay attention to any parts that are supposed to function. So I do the best I can to clean those up very well. So there's a plate that goes on first, and then this hinge is going to attach to that plate. However, that hinge section there has several little bends in it, and you can see them there. So we're just going to start on one end and glue these up more or less one at a time, and kind of straightening this hinge out as we go. It's very fragile in those little pin areas there. So we're just going to have to be really careful and try not to break or lose any of those out of there. It would be quite a problem to make those up and try to correct that. So we're just going to start at one side and work our way across and kind of straighten everything as we go. Now, as you can see here, I've got it all aligned and about as straight as it's going to ever get, I guess. Shouldn't be a big problem. So next up, we'll go ahead and put the bow section, which really not much of a bow, but it's what this craft has. So we'll go ahead and glue that into place. And then we can move on to fixing some of the other little bitty pieces that goes onto this. And there are 4 of these rails that need to go onto the ramp. And the reason why they left these off is because of the molding process, because there is a backside section. So as you can see, I did leave these pieces of sprue on them that identified the parts. So I kind of cleaned up everything but that one little sprue gate area where the part number was. As you can see, right here is where these go. So it's very important that you don't confuse these because they are all different lengths. As you can see, it angles out as you go up on the sides of the ramp there. So we're going to have to make sure that we don't mix these parts up. Coincidentally, and it's kind of hard to see, but the ends of each one of those rods are slightly angled too, so you can try to put this end upside down. If it doesn't fit, just flip it over. And then of course we have these little side pieces to put in on our ramp. This is where the cables attach to, and we just glue those into place. They fit very well, and it's not a problem there. All right, so the ramp's done. Now we can turn our attention to this bottom hinge piece. So basically you got this bottom hinge piece and then a top hinge piece, and it just sandwiches the hinge pins on the ramp. So going to have a nice solid foundation. So we're going to put this in first, and of course it has these little bends in it just like our hinge did. So we'll just start off on one end, securing it into place, and kind of moving along, sort of like a zipper effect there, pulling each one into alignment as we go. Not hard to do, just takes a little bit of time, but we'll be able to get all of that lined up. Now, as if those weren't problematic as much as they were, here we go with the top half section, and sorry about my camera view there, but basically it doesn't slide into the little slots here. The top hinge half needs to slot down through the bottom hinge plate and the hull there. So luckily for us, our little jeweler's file here is just the right width, so a couple of passes through there, and it'll fit. However, it does cause a small problem. If we glue it up to the inside flat, there's 2 things that are wrong. Number one, they'll be too short. The fingers won't reach to the ends of the bottom hinge half, and then also the angle is bad. So I decided the best thing to do here is to go ahead and we're going to sand a little angle there, so that hinge will kind of line up like it's supposed to. So just very carefully sand a little, by removing some of this polystyrene at the right angle, we can change the angle of it and also make those fingers reach a little bit further, and we'll be able to get them to line up with the bottom hinge fingers there that we've already installed. So we're going to go through and check, and the angle's correct. Everything looks good. The fingers are now long enough, like they should be. So we've got a lot of good surface contact area there to grab that little bitty thin hinge that's on the ramp. The only other thing that's a problem is in the very bottom here. Yeah, right through there. There's going to be a gap, and I would rather it not be a gap there. Try to give some strength to our actual hinge there. So I decided to go ahead and put in a little bit of this thin polystyrene. Now this is, I'm trying to remember, I think it's 0.010 thickness or something like that. It's at 10,000ths or whatever. It's the thinnest polystyrene sheet you can get. And of course, when you try to shave off a millimeter wide piece of this, it's going to kind of curl up and deform a little bit. But that's okay. A little bit of polystyrene cement of some kind or solvent, like our to-me extra thin, and you can just mold it right into place. So that'll take care of the little gap that formed underneath the part there, and it helps us maintain our angle. So far so good. We're looking good here. So it kind of dawned on me that we do need to check the fitment there with the ramp hinge, because the whole idea and all this work we're doing is because we want this ramp to actually be a workable ramp. And unfortunately, that is not going to happen. So, and here's the problem. So the top finger section, which sandwiches that pin for our hinge, and we've spent all this time working on it, and then that's it. That's all the angle I can get out of it. So this ramp is never going to close. And there's just not enough room. There's not enough space in there for that hinge to actually work. I mean, we can grip it from the outside with a top and bottom hinge pieces, but there's just not enough room in those slots to allow the ramp to close. So that is unfortunate. So we're just going to skip that piece of hinge, and we're going to go ahead and put our deck on. So there's a tab at the back and two tabs, one either side, and then two little bitty nubs at the front to help align this deck up. But it's not a positive alignment all the way around. So basically, we need to kind of align the edge of the side of the hull with the edge of the deck, because these were flush. There was no overhang. So we'll just try to get it as flush as we can, and just glue it up little sections at a time here to get our deck on. So with our lower deck in place, we can check the midship area or cargo section here. Slide it in, and that seems to fit okay. And luckily, all those support structures that we have, they're up high on the sides of it. Those meet the deck, so that's not a problem. However, on the front here, it should be flush with the front of the craft, and it doesn't. It kind of sticks out proud. So the problem we have is there's a little alignment nub there that the rear bulkhead is not notched for. So in order to get that to slide back, we're going to have to do one of two things. Either notch the bulkhead or cut those little nubs off the deck. And I decided just to go ahead and notch the bulkhead itself. And that way when it slides into place, it's going to come up to the side of the, those little nubs will hit the side sections of our cargo area. So that's kind of the theory that I had going on in my head. So there we have our notches, and that should apply or allow just enough clearance so that the front of the that cargo area should be flush now. There is a little gap back there, but we can worry about that later. But we are flush, and that's right where it needs to be, because that's where the ramp closes, and yeah, there won't be any interference there, so no gaps. So I've decided to go ahead and we're gonna glue this in. While we got it, there's nothing that goes underneath it or anything, so there's no problem in us going ahead and cementing this into place. So we're going to go ahead and do that. The only exception would be if you want to have your LCM3 with the ramp down and you want those hinge details, then yeah, you're going to have to put that hinge detail in before you put the cargo area in. Now we're looking at, there's a gap between this top deck and the actual bulkhead there, so that's kind of a problem. So again, that thin polystyrene sheet that we still have a little bit of, that we trimmed off our thin sheet of polystyrene, I think will be a good gap filler. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that. A little bit of to me extra thin there, and we're just going to lay that along the top of that bulkhead, kind of close up that gap between it and the deck. So we'll get that on right there, and that's easy to do. But there was these little gaps between the bulkhead there and the side of the beginning of our superstructure. So I did wedge in a little bit of that thin polystyrene sheet there, and all you got to do is hit it with a little bit of to me extra thin to glue it into place. So we'll just check our fit to make sure that we don't have a gap there, and we're in good shape. So I know, but the rule is test fit, test fit, test fit. And as we can see here, had I not spent so much time working with the fitting of these major items, they would have us build up a lot of stuff, and lo and behold, it wouldn't fit right. So yeah, well, we got that out of the way, and we've got our plan, and the majority of the boat is actually done. We just need to put on some stuff. So we're going to go back here to step number 1 and start working on our rudders and our prop shafts and stuff. So here we are at step 1. The rudder is a 2-piece affair. I don't know why they did it this way, but they did. It seems to me that they could have molded this just as easily as one piece, but the fit is not an issue. They go together no problem. Now we're going to put our propeller shafts in place, because it is up underneath some of that supporting structure for our rudder. So we do need to get those in first. Now, anytime you put like parts on that are parallel to one another, you need to double check and make sure that the symmetry is right and it's not thrown off. We want our propellers to line up correctly, and anything that's crooked, people are going to see it. You're going to see it. You're not going to be happy with it. So pay attention to them, and make sure that you allow these parts to dry fully after cementing them into place, so that you're not bending them out of alignment. So next up, we're going to put our rudders in. Simply a little round circle for the shaft for the rudder to sit in. And then we'll put the lower bracket on. And it does just kind of snap into a little hole on the bottom edge of the the rudder itself. Just cement these into place and just simply repeat for the opposite side. And again, alignment is critical, so you want to make sure that you've got everything lined up correctly. Now, if you want your rudder pointing off to the left or the right in a partial turn or something like that, with this vessel on display, you can do that. Just make sure that they're parallel to each other. So step 2, they call it a cockpit assembly. We'll just call it our bridge. So this is a multi-section little house that goes over the controls. We have 2 different front pieces there, one for the Royal Navy and one for the U.S. Navy. I'll be using the U.S. Navy one, so that's the one that we're going to put on. It has some sort of a little door on the front of it. But before we can do all that, if you look at these parts, and these are going to be visible from top side, so we got these ejector pin marks that need to be filled. I'm going to use sprue goo for that. The only drawback to using sprue goo is, number 1, it takes a long time to dry, and number 2, it usually shrinks a little bit, and you're going to have to fill it probably a second time. Unless you really pile it in there, but that would take a very long time for it to dry. So we're going to set those aside and let those dry there so that sprue goo will have time to set up. And next we have some sort of a bracket there with what appears to be like a stool seat. I'm not sure what it is, but that's what it looks like. It might be some sort of a round step. But the tab that it sits on the bracket there was right at a sprue gate, so I do need to trim that up a little bit there, and throw a little bit of to-me extra thin on it and just press it into place. And we just want to make sure that it is square to the actual bracket there, and we'll just set that aside because we're not ready to build that part up yet. So moving on, we've got, let's see, our ramp's already in, so, and our deck's on. We do have these tie points to put on. There's 2 different ones now. We have the T-type, which is the U.S. Navy one, and then just the spool type, which is the item C4 there, which is the Royal Navy type. So we're not going to be doing the spool type. We'll do the T-type because that's what our vessel is. And they simply go into the little locator holes there. And we'll just throw some Tamiya cement. There are 6 of these, 3 on either side. So we'll just put those in. And you can get them crooked, so make sure that you check your alignment. Okay, so I've decided to use this perfect plastic putty just to take care of any little cracks or seams here right on the front of the hull. It's not really the bow, but yes, I know I've decided that I'm probably going to have this with the ramp up, but just in case I change my mind again, there's no sense in doing sloppy work, is it? So this is really easy to clean up with a wet Q-tip later. I'll just let that dry. We'll come back and fix that later. So moving on to our instructions here, we can start taking care. Now it says the bow ramp assembly, but that's clearly not it. This is that rear deck section, and we have a few parts to put on there. So we're going to go ahead and build that up. And don't forget that we got to get back to building up the enclosure there for the bridge. So we do have a pedestal type control panel here, and also the ship's wheel attaches to it. 2 side pieces, and then we've got a small front section there to cement into place, and that kind of help us keep it square. And then we can go ahead and put the instrument cluster into place. And a little bit of cement for that. Now on either side of this control, I'm going to call it a pedestal, we do have our levers for our engines. So apparently we have 2 engines and 2 throttle controls. And we're just going to attach those to either side. Now the little pins that allows you to put these on are smaller than the hole, so you're going to have to kind of make sure that you get those aligned correctly. Next up, we have a small hinge detail. So there's a left and right hinge part there that goes down on the deck for this hatch, which of course they don't really fit, so I had to kind of open those up a little bit, and then we can stick the end caps there for our hinge into place. And once we get those in, we can kind of wedge our hatch in between them, and then we can just close those up just onto the little pins there, and that should do it. Now I am going to secure this. I mean, that's basically a working hatch, but we don't really need a working hatch because there's nothing in there. So next up we have these 4 little boxes that goes on the corner of this deck. What goes on top of these is going to be those air intakes there for ventilation. So I don't know if there's a fan unit or something that's supposed to be inside these things, but either way, you can't get them wrong. They just glue straight on, and the way they're keyed, you can't get them around backwards. And now we can go ahead and put our controls into place. Now when it comes to the ship's wheel, we're going to leave it off. That's just going to make it easier for us to paint up in detail the gauge cluster, and we'll just do the wheel separately. All right, moving back to our instructions here. Now we're not going to do the 50 caliber gun mounts and stuff yet. It's a lot of PE. We're just going to drop on down to the next section here, section 6, and or step 6. And we have these brackets with these pulleys on them for the bow ramp. So we need to go ahead and assemble these. And as you can see, we do have some rather small parts. So following the instructions, we're going to go ahead and cement these pulleys into place. Now there are, or there is, I should say, a left and a right. So these are mirrored assemblies. So make sure that you don't get your parts mixed up. Once we get our pulleys into place, we can put the back of that bracket on. Just want to make sure that everything's seated. And once we get it fully seated, we'll just come in with a little bit of, to me, extra thin, and we'll cement these 2 halves together. And this piece actually fits pretty good. I'm kind of surprised that we didn't have to do a lot of modification here to make it work. So there we are with the bracket. Now we do have a gusset that needs to go on it. And this is just a stiffener for strength, and it just slides into place. It does have one small tab at the bottom that slots in to the side of that pulley bracket. And with that done, we can just cement it together. Now, of course, we've got the second one to put together, but it goes together just as well. So these fit really well. I'm kind of surprised. I just don't want to have any gaps there, so we are going to kind of make sure that everything is together nice and solid. So when it comes to installation, there are 2 locator pins that these brackets go on to. A little bit of, to me, extra thin there, and that will definitely hold it into place. That, to me, extra thin will wick right up underneath those flat sides, and just want to press them in, make sure that they're well seated. So moving on with our instructions here, step 7, we can attach the deck, and we can also go in and put in these vents or intakes. And we also have our winches, so there's a left and a right. There's a housing to go on and some vent tubes that needs to be installed. And we won't be attaching the fire extinguisher because we're going to have to do some work with it, and we're going to paint it separately. And then on to step 8, we have some other small pieces to do. However, we are going to leave off the PE for now. We'll be doing the PE later on. So we'll go ahead and attach these housings here for our winch drum. Now, there are some little bitty ejector pin marks on the inside that we do need to trim away. That way they seat like they're supposed to. When it comes to the actual drum itself, it actually just snaps into place. Really not any issues there. You don't even have to cement it into place if you don't want to. And there we are, the left and right. The opposite side goes on the same way. No problems with it. Now for our little vent tubes. They kind of look like candy canes. They're bent over at the top so that water doesn't go down inside them. There are 2 of them for the left side and 1 on the right. Just follow the instructions and get them faced in the correct orientation there. And once you get them on, just be very careful because they are super fragile. 4 of them come in the kit, and we only use 3 during assembly, which is a good thing because I broke one of them when I was cutting it free from the sprues. So be careful with these. They are super fragile. So next up, we have our upper deck, and we'll just go ahead and cement it into place. And as you can imagine, since we'd had so much trouble with it before, I do want to make sure that I get it seated and no gaps between the deck and the rest of the vessel structure. And then we can go ahead and put on these intakes. And the location hole and the peg for it are mismatched in size, meaning that it really kind of wobbles around. So we do need to be careful and make sure that we get them lined up and vertical and not leaning over. Remember now, anything that is adjacent from one to the other, if it's misaligned, then it's going to show up. So you want to pay special attention to make sure that these things are vertical. We do have this, I don't know what this part is. It's some sort of a, I don't know, it's a slide rail or something. It has little alignment tabs on the back side of it. It'll only go in one way, so that's not a problem. And we're just going to butt it up to that bottom stiffening structure there, that horizontal brace. And just make sure that it's fully seated. And that's it for that piece. So when it comes to the covers for the winch drums that we installed earlier, we're going to leave those off and paint those separately. That'll allow us to run our line or our cable to the drums. So now we're going to go back and start working on all the sprue goo that we have for that little armor structure for the bridge. I'm just using a number 11 hobby knife blade here and just slicing off the protruding parts of the sprue goo, just trimming it down a little bit. And if you look really careful, you can see the shiny sections where the blade didn't make contact. So those are sink marks in the sprue goo. We'll have to refill those, and then we'll sand everything off later. I just want to make sure that we got plenty there. So by slicing it off the way I just did, it'll expose any of those little shiny areas that needs to be refilled. So next up, we do have a hatch that goes over that access hole there on the lower rear deck. I think that there was supposed to be a ridge sticking up from the deck where that hatch is supposed to positively set on. However, in the mold, they didn't they didn't mill it out. So you'd need to check your alignment there. Just put a little bit of cement on it there and just make sure that it's not crooked, because there is no positive location for it there. It could be a little bit off if you're not careful. So now we'll just go back in and clean up that perfect plastic putty that we put on the front of the craft there. Just cleaning up all the excess. excess. Cleans up really easy. That's why I really like this stuff. It's not a structural kind of putty, but it does the job for simple seams and cracks. So on our brackets here for those pulleys that we installed earlier, this one on the right hand side actually sticks a little proud of the deck and the hull, and the other one not so much, but I'm just going to go ahead and sand it as well. So I don't want these overhanging because they didn't overhang on the actual vessel. So simple little hit it a couple of times with the sanding stick, and all will be well. And of course, you guys know me. I like to test fit everything. So we're going back to the ramp. I'm just going to set it on those lower hinge halves that are on the craft, and I'm checking the alignment of the ramp there. We should have an even gap either side, and it should look straight, and if there is a gap, it should be parallel to the ramp, just like that. If it's not, then we would sand a little bit. I think I need to sand a little bit on the right side so that it looks looks good. We don't want any crooked lines there. So now when it comes to that deck section that we first put on, there is a kind of a little bit of a bevel to it from the molding process, which shouldn't be there. So I'm just going to take a sanding stick and run it around the entire edge. Probably should have done it sooner, but I just decided to do it now. That way it's vertical and it doesn't bulge out in any specific area. So on to section 2. So we're moving backwards now, but this is one of the last major things that I think we need to do, and that's to take care of the pilot house / bridge. And the way we assemble this thing, it just has these slots and grooves to put it together. It's not a great way to do this, but I know why the engineers did it. They didn't have a whole lot of material to work with, so it is a little bit difficult. Do pay attention to your instructions, because I glued the front section to the back and I had to pull it apart real quick and flip it around. So it's a little shaky getting started, but after you get a couple of pieces on, it kind of firms up enough that you can line the corners up, and that's what we're looking to do. Now I do let this set for about an hour before I try fitting it, because I don't want to be pushing it apart. And as you can see, it doesn't fit. Big surprise there. So we need to fix that. And the way I've decided to do that, it's the distance from the front to the back wall sections are too close. So they don't fit over top of that pedestal we'll call it the bridge floor that's raised on the rear deck there. So we're gonna thin it out with a file front and back, and then sand it a little bit. And then once we do, it should, when we push it on, it should go all the way down and meet the actual deck. And we're just going to check it for gaps and see whether or not it's sitting in an acceptable manner. So That looks okay. Yeah. I do sand a little bit more on the bottom and flat sand it, but we get it to fit. Next up is that I guess it's not really I don't think it's a chart table, but I'll call it a stool and bracket. We're going to go ahead and cement that. Now, in the instructions, you would have put this on earlier, but as you can see, since I kind of anticipated a problem with the fit of this, I didn't cement it in earlier. So we're going to do it now. And then there is a small round disc that goes in the top corner of our structure there. So a little bit of to me extra thin, and we'll just plop that into place.
Well, okay, there we are. So I did just tape the ramp into place here with some Tamiya masking tape there on either side to hold it into place. You can see the little hinge fingers there for the bottom section of the hinge, but I just couldn't, to be honest with you, I didn't want to spend a whole lot more time dealing with that hinge. I don't think it would have ever have really worked to begin with. By the time I would have gotten those top fingers for that hinge thinned out enough for it to work, there wouldn't be enough polystyrene left there to actually do the job. I'm sure it would break off. So, however, I will say that if you want to model this with the ramp down, you can still insert those little fingers so that you've got that hinge detail if you're looking at the craft, you know, in a ramp down position. So we're going to go with the ramp up, I believe. I've kind of decided to go that route. Also, we had that fit issue here where this bulkhead meets the upper portion of the engine room. Little space there that we filled with a strip, and the little spaces right there where the cargo area slid up to that engine room area. So yeah, little fit issues here and there. I mean, you could probably have filled that also with some putty and sanded it, but I opted for the polystyrene strip, and that seemed to work out pretty good. And we didn't glue this superstructure in place. It'll just make it so much easier for our painting and detailing later on. We'll be able to paint the inside of that without too much trouble, and also get our instruments there, the gauges and everything painted up. So that's the majority of the build in the polystyrene. We still got some little bitty pieces to deal with, but that's no problem. So that's going to be the end of part one. Part two, we're going to be dealing with our weapons. So we got two 50 cals to put on, and the stands for those, the mounts, the brackets, and everything are Photo Etch. So we have those Photo Etch parts to work with. So we'll be building those structures up, and we'll be installing some of it and getting everything ready for paint. So that's in part two, and you're not going to want to miss that. So we've still got a lot of work to do before we get to paint. So special thanks to all my subscribers. Because of you guys, I keep building these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. If you did, don't forget to give a like. And also, if you are new to the channel and not a subscriber, I hope today I earned your subscription, if I can say it. So that'll be it for this video. You guys stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. And leave a comment. I'll read them all.